welcome back to another Junking for Joy podcast. And I'm here with two of my beautiful friends and fellow doctors who are here to share some more good information with you. We hope you are having a good time in your life, that you are enjoying your life, and that you are junk journaling. And if you're not junk journaling, you can start. Junk journaling really does bring in so much joy, so much passion, so much creativity. And it's been that way for me. I've been creating a lot this week in my journal. And when we start really paying attention to who we are, we recognize we have more in common than we realize sometimes. And the last time we all got together, we were all talking about some of the wounds we shared and some of the experiences we have had with people who have had some narcissistic traits. And when we do this work, we find all kinds of stuff that we don't know we have buried. And we wanted to jump on today to share our experience, to lighten the load a little bit for those who may be going through it, and just to think about what we all got from our last session together. So, y'all, if you haven't seen any of these workshops that we're doing, jump on board. And I can talk more about that too, because didn't it make a difference? It made a difference for me.
Yeah.
And I feel like people that want to walk this walk and do this inner work need more spaces like this together,
Mhm.
to let them know they're not alone, to let them know that there are other people who have walked the walk or who are walking the walk and doing the inner work, which sometimes isn't glamorized like the outer work is. You don't always see immediate results especially when you do energy work and when you're working in a creative space, you may not always see it. So we just want to bring our experience to this call today and go from there. So that's my little short intro. And now I'm going to share with my two lovely ladies here and let them reintroduce themselves. They've both been on before, but we just want everyone to remember, and they may not have seen some of our other episodes. So, Dr. Ralitza, my friend,
Thank
would you
you.
like to
Thank
share,
you.
yes, a little bit about who you are?
Absolutely. Gayla, thank you so much first of all, for creating this space for us to come together. When you say junk journaling, I absolutely love that. When I used to teach medical school and high school, I would get my students to make vision boards, and I would tell them it's the old school way that they had to do it, not on their computers, on Canva or different software, but really like go get magazines, cut them out, really feel into, what you're choosing to put on your vision board. So to my understanding, junk journaling is very similar to that, but it's an ongoing process, which is I think, such a beautiful experience, and it is so fun. And when you see that thing out there in that magazine, and you identify with it and you resonate with it, and it's so for me, it's almost like a part of claiming it. It's that energetic piece of taking it from our vision up here to really grounding it and honoring and really claiming it and saying, no, this is something I'm going to create or I identify with. So I do think it really helps with that process. But thank you for sharing the space last time too, for us to come together and really, there's such a beautiful way of becoming when you're seen by others and when you're able to move energy together, and you hold such a beautiful space for that. So for anybody who hasn't worked with you, I just want to share that it has been such a powerful process, and some of the actions that we take, although they may not make sense to a lot of people, they have such a powerful energetic component that shifts everything. And it really took so much out of me. I noticed myself into engaging and interacting with different people differently. And even, my relationship with money has shifted since our last conversation. And we can talk about that later. But yeah, it was truly powerful. And I just want to say that, as you have your audience here, I think it's testimonials are never enough. I feel, when they're typed out, and I think it's so important just to share that real human experience, of what I received. So I really, really appreciate it, and I hope it goes far and wide and touches everybody that's meant to be in your space, because it is very, very powerful. And thank you so much for having me here. I am Ralitza Spasova. I graduated in 2014, and since then I went to teach medicine, and then I started to work in healthcare transformation. And so my work in the personal and transformational and relational space is as a life alchemist. I work with emotional mastery and somatic alchemy, and to really be able to take our current life experiences and see life as a mirror of what's going on inside of us, and to be able to own it so that we can actually transform it from the inside out, as you said. And I'm so excited to learn from Doc Heather, the specialist in this work, because I am in the middle of my own personal dynamic transformation of the sort of that codependent narcissistic dynamic, let's call it. And so, yeah, I've thought a lot about writing a book about, that narcissists need love too, because I've obviously loved people with those tendencies. And I think it's really hard to sometimes place boundaries and distance ourselves, which is really part of that, healing methodology, when, you feel for that person and when you're connected. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to dive into this and have this conversation. I usually don't share the things that are going on, personally currently. So I'm excited to see how this goes. Thank you for for inviting me into this space.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back. And I think we can talk all the time. We can create a series of stuff and just have people come on and we can just share and share. So thank you for coming and for sharing that. Thank you for the testimony. Thank you for letting me receive today. So I appreciate you. Thank you. Now, my girl, Doc Heather. Oh,
Oh,
man.
awesome. So, listen, I'm excited to jump into this because such good things are coming up. As Dr. Gala said, we are all physicians by training, trade, and practice. But oh my goodness, life happens, and it happened hard to me that walked me into this season of life to say, you know what? Why am I struggling as a physician, as a doctor? There's such a prestige around that, right? Or supposedly, we're supposed to be, doing well ourselves, out here helping and healing others. But yet I came to a place where I felt like I was underemployed or unemployed, homeless, and looking at my son traumatized by things that were going on and trying to figure out, how did I get here? What happened? So that walks me into what I'm up to these days, on this side of life, and that is life doctoring. Okay, we can get into that in details later, but today's topic plays a big part in that narcissism. I like to acknowledge too that it's not just narcissism by the definition medically, which I think we'll discuss specifically later on, but just toxic. Oh my goodness, toxic. So I realized that I didn't want to make the person who may have a personality disorder called narcissism bad. So I just acknowledged that the relationships that I was having were toxic, that were dysfunctional, as we sometimes say. And I'm sure we're going to dive into some of the details of those things. But that's what I'm up to. I am doing the life doctoring, which means I'm still in human capital. That's ultimately what it is. I'm still in human service and human capital. And that means instead of me just looking at you physically, looking at your emotional or mental health, I'm looking at everything in your life. That means your environment, your work tones and habits. What do your relationships look like? Maybe even your finances, because maybe if those are bad, you're not going to do well physically, right? So I just want to let everyone who knows, who's watching this, and I believe those who are going to need it are going to catch this video specifically. And please let us know that it has served you, that it resonates with you, and that you want more. And then we'll bring more, I'm sure, back. But that's me in a nutshell for right now. And let's dive in if you're okay
Yeah,
with it.
I am. I am. I'm ready to dive in. And I will also say a lot of what we're going to share today is from personal experience. It's not necessarily from what you may see in a book, like you were saying. It's not from, this expert panel, as a lot of people may think. We're sharing just based on what we have also walked. And I
Hmm.
think that's the most powerful medicine, isn't it? It's the medicine of life. It's the wisdom.
Hmm.
It's really the wisdom that we are offering people. And so that takes life experience, all the wounds, all of the hard things we've walked, all of that is what comes to allow us to be able to just share our perspective. So we're not here to diagnose, we're not
Correct.
here to treat. We're not here to take on anybody's problems or issues. And so I just always like to mention that, because if someone's having trouble, they need to see their doctor. or their psychiatrist or whomever, their therapist, because that's not what this is for. We are really just here to share our experience and what we have encountered. And we just so happen all to have medical degrees. So that's
Mhm.
really how it works for us, at least in this container of space. So, that being said, let's talk a little bit about what it actually is to be a narcissist, as we have been labeling it, or it really is just to have narcissism personality disorder, or really what it is to just embody these characteristics, right? That's I think that's how we want to talk about it more, like, like Heather was saying, about the characteristics. And it says someone with an excessive need for admiration, a profound lack of empathy for others, and a deeply integrated belief that they are superior or entitled. That's like the big, huge definition of it. And it's often these people will have manipulations in their behavior patterns. They may seem arrogant or be classified as arrogant and have a fragile self esteem and requires constant validation. So that's the working definition of what it means. And there are so many variations, isn't it, of this type of personality, or I really feel like it's a trauma response.
Hmm.
It's a trauma
Mhm.
response, it's something that happens based on what has happened to you. And then you become this. I don't necessarily know if we're born this way. I think this has a lot to do with how things have happened in each other's lives. So we just want to honor, like we say, with compassion, these personalities that exhibit these characteristics. Grandiosity is one of the characteristics of it, and that means that this person may have an inflated sense of self importance and superiority. Lack of empathy, like we talked about before, is an inability or unwillingness to recognize the feelings and needs of others. So it's all about me, right? All about me kind of energy, which mirrors the opposite in the empath, who may be more codependent and who may over empathize. So there is always this narcissism empathic relationship that a lot of people have been in. I know I have walked that walk, being an empath for sure. And Dr. Ralitza mentioned all about codependency. Can relate to
Mhm.
that one for sure. Need for admiration, constant excessive need for attention, compliments, and validation. Entitlement, unreasonable expectations of unfavorable treatment or automatic compliance with their wishes.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Meaning you may not get what you need at all. It becomes all about
Right.
them, and you may not even be able to have what you want. So we can give examples of this. There are a couple more. Exploitative behavior, taking advantage of others to achieve their own goals. And arrogance, disdainful or patronizing attitudes. So yeah, it doesn't sound like fun, does it?
And thank you for reading that, Gayla. I think it's so important to be able to, really take a look at each of those patterns
Mm-hmm.
and recognize on what side of that pattern we're on. I
Mm.
think my greatest power in this healing journey has been recognizing where I'm actually creating and holding space for those dynamics to exist in my life. So, not necessarily pointing the finger of, oh, this person's like this. It's like taking that power back to say, well, hold on a second. How am I contributing to that dynamic as the person who identifies more as a codependent? Right. Because in the dynamic, there's always a yin and a yang, a masculine, a feminine, and however you want to. So I think in this dynamic, it's really important to label. And I'm saying this because as the person who invites this type of energy. Once we start to take personal responsibility for it, we can really say we invite and hold space for this type of energy to come into our lives because we don't feel enough. Right. And so I think identifying that within
Mm.
myself, recognizing that to be able to say, oh, well, of course I've been attracting this type of person. It's not some magical thing, is because I haven't owned myself fully. And at the beginning of this journey, I have to say, my first thought was like, oh my gosh, am I a narcissist? And my therapist said, the fact that you're asking that proves that you are not the narcissist. So I'm like, oh, that would be a good book cover. So I'm actually in the middle of, contemplating what that might look like. But I think it's just important to say that it's really easy to label others. But our real power comes when we're able to take that personal responsibility for how we're contributing to the dynamic. And I know that's something that really helped me to go from victim to victor, or however you want to call it. Ironically, my ex-husband's name is Victor. So it's funny. But here we are. So thank you for sharing that.
So
Mhm.
you know that's something that you said, like acknowledging that that this energy in this space right here, and Gayla, thank you definitely for allowing us to do this. But I want to let people know, like you put the disclaimer out there that although we have this medical doctor behind us or with us, it doesn't mean we're diagnosing or treating right now. But I will say the biggest reason why coming into this energy space, into this purpose, was to help heal, still healing. And as well as for me, it was personally saying, look, things keep happening that I don't like, that I don't want. Relationships keep dropping, and many of you may know, or if you may know, if you look back in my history of being on social media in this kind of a platform, I've always stated recurrently that this type of energy was in my bloodline, my bedroom, my professional life, and my social personal life, right? So it showed up everywhere in my being, and it came to a point where it was like, I don't want to keep repeating these cycles. I don't want to keep repeating these type of experiences, right? I want to like enjoy my life. Like, these things are happening. There's so much that we have opportunity to tap into. Why am I not fulfilled? Why am I not smiling every day? Okay. Realistically, 50 years almost in, and it's just like, oh my God, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I don't know if I can keep doing this. So I want people to acknowledge that, or to be able to recognize that the shift of this energy came into what I now know as personal development. What? It was like, huh? What is that? Like I've heard of professional development, or, something where you're into a course, you're studying something to figure out what's the next step, or how do you promote, how do you increase, improve in an area. But I had really never heard of personal development. And then there's coaching, like that's for sports, right? No, it actually could be for all of us, in a way of how do we do life better? How do we do life in an enjoyment and joyfully, as Dr. Gala's on the mission of bringing all of us back to joy, right? So that's where I want to say this space occurred, is that for me, it was that decision of like, okay, something's going on, and I want to know what that something is. And I couldn't take a test, I couldn't do a lab review and say, oh, this is it. So what I did was start studying, and that goes into absolutely what you mentioned. I want to acknowledge to people that narcissistic personality disorder, is a true mental health diagnosis. Okay. So again, we're not here to do that. We're not going to go back and say, okay, this person is, and I don't want anybody at home to be like, oh, well, that person's a narcissist. The doc said so. No, 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 no. And that's why I shifted also to sometimes just saying it's more of a toxic or narcissistic flavor. This is a narcissistic flavor because we're going to identify characteristics and traits that are very common. Very, very common. Just like Dr. Ralitza just mentioned, is that how she said, am I the narcissist? I can guarantee you, I've had so many people, including myself, ask that exact question. Like, is it me? Like I say, I do sanity checks. Like, am I the one that's crazy? Am I the one that's abnormal, or something's wrong with me? But truthfully, yes, that is something that usually is the catch, where if you're asking that question because you're acknowledging something's wrong, then it's usually not you. But we do have a spectrum for this, right? The spectrum being, the way I realized what was going on is that I found myself to be in a lot of toxic relationships. And like I said, I've already mentioned in the areas of my life, many toxic where people were coming and going very quickly, the rapid turnover. And I'm like, what the heck? I know I'm a great person. Not arrogantly, just I really love on people. So what is it? And one of the biggest things I think all three of us can resonate with is that empathetic spirit. We enjoy seeing other humans do their best, feel their best. Okay, so what we do as service persons is we're going to give what we know to give, serve how we know how to serve, to encourage that doing your best, whatever that best looks like. It could be different than my best, but the point is, we want you to do your best. We're all here on this earth for a reason, and we all are phenomenal people. And sometimes it's just for us to say, hey, this is what I see that's phenomenal and great about you, and recognize that. So I say that to say that once I realized, yes, I'm an empath, I realized also that I'm attracting a person who did not have that. And I just want to quickly go to my definition of narcissism and or toxic person. It is mentioned that it was a trauma response. Absolutely, it could be a trauma response because what I recognize is that there was this consistent definition of people who were human beings between the age of like 7 to maybe 10 who had some emotional trauma to their life. They had their family, the parent left. Abandonment was a big commonality. Emotionally abused, always, oh, you're just dumb, you're stupid, you're, just always negatively talking into, so never emotionally being supported. Lack of touch, lack of emotional connection, that affectionate response that we're desiring as young people, as children, to nurture ourselves and to groom ourselves. All of those concepts was very common in the person who was identified to be narcissist. And in my definition, what I came up with is that at that point, as a child, okay, somewhere between, like I said, key ages, those like they say influential ages, 7 to 10, maybe 7 to 12, once that trauma occurred, their emotional growth
Mhm.
stopped. It was stunted. Okay. And so, with that being stunted, they were unable to make those emotional connections with human beings, with other human beings, because they were never taught that. They were never given that. So, how can they create it? So
Mhm.
again, not making it bad for them, but recognizing and giving that person grace to say, wow, you were emotionally traumatized and therefore stunted, and you just grew up to be a human. Because guess what? No matter what, change is going to happen. We're going to get older every year. Every
Mhm.
year. Dang it, I'm trying not to, but we do. So if you resonate with that, you can sit with that, and I want people to take this video, this podcast, this session, and review it, because you're gonna maybe find something, a nugget that gets it. But that's something. Remember, that person on that end was emotionally traumatized, and therefore at that moment probably stunted in their emotional ability to grow and to connect and make those bonds. And if you can look at that from that standpoint, you give them grace, and then it's a difference. But then we shift into us, and I'm sure we're going to get into that, who are empaths who want to love on people. And there used to be a cartoon, I may be dating myself, and then I'll leave it here, that a particular character, Elmira, she was like, she would take the animal, she was like, oh, and I love him and hug him and kiss him. And it was just something, she smothered the animals with affection. She smothered the animal with the animated animal with just over like this overabundance of love, where it was just like too much, like Elmira, back off. But I feel like sometimes as an empath, I'm that extreme empath that does that, okay? That just wants to love them and hug them and kiss them and do all the things. But some people need very much pacing, I'll put it that way. So, all right, I'll leave it there. I got to plug in, and we'll keep going.
Yeah, so thank you for all of that because you're speaking from experience. And you learned from your own relationships. And I just wrote down in my notes to remind myself our relationships are our curriculum,
Mhm.
right? Like we were born into families, many of us who said, yes, yes, I will come and help heal this for my generational wounding, for my family line, and I will come and be the one to bring this to light. And there are so many people who can resonate with that and relate to being the one in their family who is doing the healing for this. That's been a lot of the ancestral work I've done. That's been a lot of the shamanic work I've done. I've done a lot of work for myself and watching others share similar stories of that. And when you come to say yes, in order for you to get information, you have to walk through these things. So I used to be like Heather, and one of the things about being a physician is you're kind of in this superhuman career, and you become a little robotic and superhuman to get through it, to learn and to get through a residency or to get through, on call or whatever you need to do. And a little bit of yourself has to, de I don't want to say, yeah, compartmentalize. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
really you're compartmentalizing. You're finding a way to navigate when you're tired. You're finding a way to care for someone else above yourself. You're finding a way to be dog tired, need to pee and hungry, but yet you're running a code or yet you're delivering a baby or whatever it needs to be done. You're studying all night long. And these reps of this lifestyle begins to put you further and further from your own needs sometimes and thinking about others, which we were great at because we're natural empaths. It was never all
Hmm.
about us. It couldn't have been, or we wouldn't have made it through one day.
Hmm.
And so when you say, is this me, is this me, you're like, no, this isn't me, but I have experienced this because unknowingly, at least I didn't know it at the time when I was training, that this is part of my curriculum. This is what you need to understand. But let's talk a little bit about, we talked about the characteristics, the grandiosity, the lack of empathy, the need for admiration, entitlement, exploitative behavior, and arrogance being the key characteristics. What are some of the things that you have experienced, whether it be in a familial relationship with your family, whether it be in a romantic relationship, or even professional, that of these characteristics did you actually experience yourself?
Mm.
Okay, so I think the best way for me to go at this is to kind of like paint a picture, give a scenario, tell a story.
Tell a story. Yeah.
And ultimately, like some of the common things I would feel is that, for instance, I wanted to do a master's of business administrator, a couple of years ago. And in that moment, I was told, like, you don't need that. What do you need that for? It was the lack of support. It was the lack of encouragement or even curiosity to just know why. I mean, it was immediately turned down. This is not going to work, right? And that's not so much that person being grandiose, but it's that lack of empathy, that lack of compassion toward, well, Heather, why do you want to do this? Why would you want to go get that degree? Why would you want to take that job? Why would you want to try this new experience? I got that a lot where it didn't necessarily matter where it was, whether it was in the bloodline and or the romantic, personal. It was that it was a start of I would be excited about something. Oh my God, I'm going to do this.
Mhm.
And then they're like, why? No, you shouldn't do that. I mean,
Hmm.
quickly. Well, why? You don't even know why. I mean, it's not worth it. Well, wait, who do you get to be to dominate more than me? It's my vision, it's my excitement, it's my desire. And unfortunately, I didn't know that until now, where I would respect that person, love that person's opinion, that immediately when they say, no, you don't need to do that, it's not worth it. I was
Hmm.
like, well, okay, maybe it's not. All right. And I would let it go, right? So dreams kind of faded away, maybe, if that makes sense. Dreams faded away and they would get suppressed and put down and it would make me feel sick. But that's really how it showed up. It showed up in the way of that person, and they can make some good sense. Okay, don't get me wrong. They could be like, well, it's too much time. You don't need to do that. You already got this. You don't need any more. And that's the key. I want more. I want growth.
Hmm.
And they're very, remember what I said, stunted. Like, we don't want
Hmm.
to see you doing better than me.
Hmm.
Stay here. Stay safe, stay with what I know. And there's a little bit of control over that, right? Because if
Hmm.
they can influence and encourage us in that way, and not encourage, I should take the discourage us, it's a way of kind of keeping control over another human being. So instead of them being able to empathize, compassionately connect, and support, they try to control, keep it very familiar. Because if you go out there and start talking to other people and learning some new stuff, wait, you might be trying to do really big things, and that's not where we're at. I want you to be with me. I want you to stay focused on the energy toward me, if that makes sense. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter if it's a workplace, social activities. They want that energy put into them because that's the
Hmm.
grandiosity. I need you, Heather. I need you to be 100% 24/7 focused on me, giving me everything and supplying my needs.
Hmm. That's that energetic parasite dynamic. And it really does. It comes from that place of a fear of abandonment. I've definitely identified that in the dynamic in multiple people and multiple relationships. And so I think that, being able to see the dynamic is simply that. They're just afraid of abandonment. right? They're
Absolutely.
just, they're grasping for that control because they do as soon as, and in this dynamic, this codependent narcissistic dynamic or energy exchange, it's so common that as soon as the codependent becomes excited and expansive and tapped into their passion, I work with people on the P3 alchemy mastery method, which is really passion, purpose, potential. And as soon as
Mm,
that passion starts to light up, I remind my clients that you will start to see the reflection of it in your outer world. Don't be surprised if there are people in your world that don't support you. That is actually a sign that you're doing something right. So keep going
mhm,
in that direction, because if you're in these dynamics, it will come up, because then they see, oh, they're outgrowing the
mhm,
container, as you said, of control that I've created for them to stay small, to stay mine, right? And so it's such an important dynamic to see ourselves in and contributing to, and actually triggering their abandonment wound, right? Which is usually the reason that we trauma bonded in the first place. Because I think codependence, we also have that abandonment wound, and because we overserve instead of being served, we overserve. And something that Dr. Gala said earlier is I think it's really important to address in the healthcare space, that so many of us, and to thank God that we came up from this dynamic, otherwise there may not be a healthcare force of
mm,
people that do this work. So I'm not saying it as, everyone needs to realize this and leave healthcare. But if we didn't have that dynamic growing up in our relationships, we would not submit to the types of control and the types of hierarchy that actually brought us through medical education to the point of being, having
mhm,
our MD degree, licensed physicians, whatever you have it, but becoming this educated person in the system that we came up in is actually part of that dynamic served us until now. And that now we can see it and
mm,
say, oh, wait a second, I don't want to contribute. As you said, Doc Heather, earlier, I don't want to contribute to the dynamic anymore. I want to claim my sovereignty. I want to live in this place of joy and connectedness and unity and real living my purpose, right? And I don't want to hold space for that dynamic anymore. I don't identify with that anymore. And as long as we continue to resonate at that frequency of over giving and you know, um, giving ourselves up for the purpose of somebody else, because that's what we're doing as codependents in that
mhm,
dynamic, is saying, you know what, your happiness is more important than mine. You know what, you feeling a lack of abandonment, I'm going to stay so that you don't feel abandoned, and we're giving up our passion and our joy. And so I just want to recognize that it is actually in our power to say, I'm not going to do this anymore. I did it the other day, so I'll share I'll share a personal experience. I was taking my son to basketball and saw mom pulling in from work. She was working late. It was around 8 p.m. and I said, "Oh, in my heart, I thought I know she would love to come with us, because if I keep driving off, she's going to feel abandoned." And because at a
mm,
very young age, her anxiety and her fears, we moved from Bulgaria. It was a communist country. And so we moved to Canada when I was 3 years old. And I just remember as a very, very young child feeling a sense of responsibility for my mother and her emotions, because it was always like energetic chaos all the time. And understandably, I mean, we were new in a country. She didn't know the language. She had to redo her nursing degree. Like, there were so many moments that it was a lot for her. And my dad didn't come with us right away. He came 9 months later. And so I couldn't even imagine what she was going through internally. But I felt it as a child, as a very empathic,
mm,
energetically sensitive being. And so my job was always to just be that love, that stability, that safety, that, resonance of everything's okay. And it's funny because it's in my gene keys. So it's in my energetic blueprint of who I am in this lifetime, to serve that divine feminine grace, that holding, and at the same time, I want to honor it, but not give into how it can become, as you said, toxic, or the dynamic that actually undermines me as a human being and contributes to something that creates unsafety and, a lack of mental wellness and, sovereignty really in our being. And so I did. I felt her coming in, and I knew I was playing this power struggle with myself of, even my son said, "No, don't invite her. Let's just go, just drive." Because he wanted to get to basketball, right? And it was going to take a little bit longer to bring her along. But I don't know, there was something inside of me that still gave into that dynamic that was like, okay, let's just wait for grandma, let her come with us, right? And then, of course, as soon as we got there, I had a phone call in the car. She took him inside. She's calling blowing up my phone. Why aren't you here? Why aren't you inside? He's waiting for you to play basketball. I'm like, no, I'm not. I took the time to explain, I am not developing that codependent dynamic with my child. He is 11 years old. His basketball is his passion. It is his responsibility to go with the ball and the net. I gave him the tools. I brought him there. It's his responsibility to get that ball in the net so that he can get better. But if I continue to contribute to that codependent dynamic, he will become patterned in the same way that I grew up. I said, stay away from him when he is able to do things like cook for himself, like clean up the kitchen afterwards, like go and play basketball and practice on his own. Like these are things that are shaping him as a man to not be a narcissist. So don't do that, please. I don't want to create another person with these expectations that now every woman in his life will come to serve him. Oh, kinky. Like that's not service from a place of love is very different from service from a place of expectation or control. And so it's so interesting to just see these dynamics in the relationships constantly. And we are the generational curse breakers. We are the ones that are here. Like our generation, I just want to zoom out a little bit, but like our generation is the one that has become aware of these dynamics. Our parents didn't know better, right? When we come from a generation that was blind and deaf to our energy, spirituality, how it all fits in. And not everybody, of course, there were those people, the line sixes in the I Ching that, they're like, they are the healers and they are the ones. And I'm not saying, I mean, for generations, there's been people, but now as a massive humanity on a massive scale, we are coming into this consciousness of awareness of our dynamics and our patterns, and it's our responsibility to do something about it. And I mean, you can, put your head back in the sand like an ostrich and ignore it, but the world is still going on. And if you don't deal with it, if you don't say, okay, this awareness, I get to, not I have to, it's not even an I have to thing, it's I get to take personal responsibility and change it for the next, not one generation, many generations. And, in the indigenous perspective, it takes 7 generations to actually change. And so we are just the very beginning. But if we don't take personal responsibility for it, then we continue to pass that on. And I know that is something I am definitely not wanting, willing, or able energetically, spiritually to pass on. It's so obvious now. And it wasn't before, and I had to have grace with myself when I started to become aware of these patterns. Like, holy moly, I'm actually contributing to this. Like a lot of the social media posts, like, hey, I see you in this dynamic and that, and I'm just like, oh, like over, and it really took a lot of seeing over and over and over and over again to identify, holy moly, I'm the one that's contributing to this dynamic, right? I'm the one that's holding space for it. And then I felt helpless and hopeless and went down the energetic sinkhole of like shame and guilt and all the things. And then at some point you come to a place, if you're fortunate enough to meet a coach or a therapist or, a physician who knows about these dynamics, to be able to say, hey, there's something going on here that you can actually change. You have the power to come out of this, right? On the other side. But without that awareness, when we in the medical world, and again, I left the medical prescribing world because that was my path and my journey. I still believe medications exist for a place and a time, and they're very helpful if they're used correctly with the support outside to actually shift the energetic dynamics. And so I'm creating a tech platform. I'm creating a certification process for physicians to be able to learn not just the medicine the way that we learned it. I used to teach biochemistry and med psych and all these things, and my way through teaching medicine, I know taught me where I'm meant to show up. And it is in this place of now we have to bridge it. Now we have to bridge the spiritual and the energetic with the scientific and the medical. It's time, because our humanity is awakening, because a medication to numb
Mm.
is not enough. Like, it requires more than that to get us through this. So thank you for allowing me to share that, because it's a big part of why I do what I do now. And I'm in healthcare system transformation on the corporate side, and then on the energetic business side. Like, my purpose and my gift to humanity is that, calling people forward and holding the space for that transformation to happen. And it happens in myself, and I think it will for the rest of my life. So there is no done. I can't wait till I'm done to serve in this space. But I think it's a really, really important awareness to own, yeah, in ourselves.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you said a lot in that. And some of the things that came through to me is, some of us were raised in this dynamic. So you have a wounded parental role or parental influence. And then you have a child that's growing up with a wounded parent. And
Mm-hmm.
so then the child develops wounds or develops, their own perspective of things. They watch these dynamics and then they themselves become, wounded in their own way. But then that child has more resources maybe, or has more ability to be vulnerable. Cause that's what I wrote down. I was like, this is a vulnerability thing that a lot of the generation ahead of us, they didn't have time. They're working, and not even really thinking about themselves. They were just like, I just got to figure this out. I'm in survival mode.
Totally.
I'm in,
Mm.
the first generation out of oppression in a way. And so you can only expect so much for that. And then they like pass on the torch to the next generation. And like you say, the next group, like your sons are going to grow up in a different dynamic from what
Mhm.
we grew up in. And so then hopefully they will pass the torch on. So by the time we're down 7, 8, 9 generations, which we won't be here to see, we'll be the ancestors on the other side. It's like, yeah, I showed up. So if somebody's in doubt and they're like, I don't really see this stuff happening, because a lot of people feel down right now. They feel like the world is going to pot. They don't have, the positive outlook on things. And sometimes it does feel messy before it gets better. But just know there's pockets of light of people who are out here who actually want to see things change, who are doing the work like us, and you're not alone. Because if you grew up with that and you thought, I can't get nothing done right because this personality tells
Recording
me
stopped.
I can't. This personality tells me I'm not doing the right thing. This personality tells me X, Y, and Z, whatever that might be. That's not true. You can do things well, and you may be the first one to go to therapy. You may be the first one to ask for coaching. You may be the first one to maybe get divorced out of a dynamic that's no longer serving your family, and the other, let's say, people in your family didn't do that. They just stuck with it and put their heads down and kept going. So just know you're not alone. And there are people who are saying yes to changing some of these patterns. And you have to give yourself grace, because sometimes you repeat the patterns before you can heal them. You're like, dang, I did the same thing they did. At least and now you're coming from a place of power. So the other thing I wanted to share are some of the behaviors that happened as a result of someone developing this. And gaslighting is one. I know gaslighting is really being talked a lot about right now. People really are understanding what that feels like and looks like. Don't gaslight me. Don't say that to me. So it's really a buzzword, isn't it, right now? So that's when you manipulate someone into doubting their own perceptions of things. Like Heather was saying, I know I want to get this degree. Oh, you don't need that. You don't, what do you want to do that for? And sometimes this stuff shows up. We give men a bad rap, but a lot of this behavior can show up in women and men, right? I've seen a lot of females talking about the narcissistic relationship between their relationship with men, but there are a lot of women talking about their relationship of narcissism and gaslighting with their mothers, and father. So this is definitely something that can be, both genders of people can exhibit this, because everybody can experience trauma. A fragile ego. I thought that was really important. Reacting with rage, shame, or humiliation to criticism, meaning you can't take what somebody else may offer you. And so, because you're so vulnerable to it, you throw it back at them rather than being able to receive it because your ego is so fragile and you can't handle it. And you think about that happening in a child, that child begins to absorb what that parent may be offering because the parent's ego is so fragile. Envy, frequently being envious of others or believing that others are envious of them. So I think that's an interesting dynamic. And transactional relationships, meaning you don't have that emotional connection,
Mhm.
treating relationships as a mean to boost their own ego or status. So those are some of the, I call them wounds, that you may experience if you have a relationship dynamic with someone who has a narcissistic trait. So, all of those being things that we want to give grace and compassion for. So, they're all self protection mechanisms, aren't they?
Yes. Yes, they are.
Mm. And the
Yeah.
funny thing is, as you read them, sorry to jump in, but as you read them, I'm like, that is our entire society. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like that is literally, if you look around, that is almost everything we see everywhere.
Mhm.
Sorry, Doc Heather, you had to say something.
I mean, listen, I have a lot to say on this topic because it is the majority of human beings. I mean, period. And what you described earlier about, giving yourself grace and learning through the journey and how you contribute is human. It's human. So these are all human dynamics, and unfortunately, it has become multiplied. So back in the day, I didn't really understand that comment of hurt people. But in this flavor of things, narcissistic flavor person, they're bound to kind of hurt another because they don't have that emotional maturity themselves. So they're going to emotionally wound others, whether it be in a toxic way of demeaning someone emotionally, or they avoid people emotionally. They get so close, but then it's like, up, getting, nope, back off. Um, and so ultimately, yes, people in their path are going to get hurt. There was so much said between the two of you all. It could be 8,000 sessions on all of this, because it's a dynamic. It really is. One of the key things you said is that, the person who is so-called considered narcissist, again, we're not diagnosing, we're just saying the narcissistic flavor, this toxic person, tends to have an internal dialogue. Whatever I realize, they have an internal dialogue because remember, they got stunted at 8 years old. And so they're always thinking, I'm not good enough. I will never be able to do this. Look at her. She gets to do it. Why can't I do it? It's this negative, demeaning internal dialogue that they're always having that you and I are not privy to. But the point is, in their mind, that's how the world operates. They are in self-preservation mode. Dr. Gala said that absolutely, it's self-preserving behaviors. So if I can keep control over my environment in my relationships, that's safety because I know what's coming. There's no uncertainty there. Okay. So it's like, okay, I want to self-preserve. I don't want to go beyond this feeling. If that person makes me feel good and keeps me feeling good, I want that. Okay. That's why I don't want to share them. And I love somebody said that earlier, like, to stay mine. That is their concept. I don't want you to abandon me. I want you to be right here in my pocket for whenever I need you, for whatever reason. Money, emotion, uh, encouragement,
Energy,
energy. It is all energy. Every
all
single bit of
energy.
it is energy.
Hmm.
And I want to flip to the other side because my focus has been not so much, I want people, this is a big one, consciousness. We said it several different ways: consciousness, awareness, acknowledge. Unfortunately, we're kind of all humanistically robotic. We're raised to, okay, you're going to grow up, you're going to turn 18. And when you turn 18, you got to go out and be an adult. And what does that look like? It means probably getting a job and making income and having bills and paying bills. And maybe it includes having a full family. These are some very societal conditioned things, right? But so there's a robotic way or automated to this. But do we stop and say, am I really enjoying this? Do I like it? Do I have fun? And so, because we're not conscious at that point, we're just doing what society says is supposed to be the best thing to do. We became 18-year-old. We became adults. We're supposed to do the next steps. we don't have that consciousness about us. So we're not going to fix things that we are not even aware kind of that's broke, if that makes sense, right? Um, there's a lot in this. I shifted to, I identified how this person came into my life, who this person is, and this person being the narcissistic flavored person. Okay. Oh, this person was injured as a child, emotionally stunted, and they're on a lifetime path of self-preservation. And I say that to say that they become master manipulators because they started at 7 and 8 years old. I didn't find out until later on in life how to uh, shape and strongly influence my environment. They started learning at 7 and 8 years old. Okay. So they are knowingly how to do knowing. That's the other key word. That's my company. Dr. Heather knows knowledge. They are knowingly able to self preserve and have those characteristics that's going to keep their environment safe and in a space that they feel comfortable. Okay. That's them. So I shifted my energy to say, well, what about people like me who are very energetic? I mean, I am a life enthusiast. I am here breathing and I'm going to do and want the best for that. I want to enjoy life. I want to wake up every morning like, wake, and then, there's daylight, there's nighttime, any and everything, like being grateful for that. How did I get connected to so many people in this category? And with that being said, it was number one thing is I wasn't aware. I didn't know. Okay. That's a common thing. I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. And so give yourself a moment of peace. That's a key one. Grace right there. And I said, you know what? I don't like how I live this way. And I felt tired. I didn't enjoy the things I was doing. I love it. Like I love giving and serving to people, but I really wasn't being fulfilled and energetically refueled at the end of the day. And I'm like, I don't want to be drained anymore. So you know what I stepped out on? I just stepped out on simply one thing. Give me peace. And peace was a immediate survival response for me. If I don't get peace in my home, in my work environment, in myself, I'm not going to be able to make it too much longer. I'm not going to be able to continue to live this life because that's how low energy I was.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, this is, I mean, I got a series coming out, and that's something around it. Suicide. I'll say the word.
Mm-hmm.
Taking your life because you don't feel like either your life matters enough, or you're just so lethargic around living the life you're living that you're like, you know what, I want to be done with this.
Exhausted.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So my initial like, what an awakening to this was I just want peace.
Mm-hmm.
Start there. I want peace. What does that look like for you? It could be a silent household. Okay, you hear me? A few moments in the car where I'm not moving, but I'm just sitting and it's in peace. I am in this space and I get to control it because I'm by myself. I'm in the car. There's nothing moving. Just how many times did I go to the park? How many times did I escape to, absolutely, if I could, to the water, um, just to get some peace?
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because you just identify some characteristics of things, but I wanted to shift, like I said, yes, I feel like we've kind of set the ground of this is who narcissism is. But what about the person who is affected by that narcissism? And that
Yes.
person is someone who usually has a very high energy. You walk in a room, people light up just from you walking in the room. Okay. You give, and you give. You're generous. You're a people pleaser. You want everybody else to be doing well, even if it's at the detriment of yourself. So if you look, review the video, because this is it right here. That's it. If you can go and say, yep, that's me. That energetic person is usually the person who's going to attract and magnetize to the person who doesn't have that, who didn't have that at such a young age, but they're so much seeking that. They're seeking that nurturing. They're seeking that generosity. They're seeking that energetic, bubbly, I want to just love you and hug you and kiss you person because they just really, all they really wanted was emotional connection when they were young and they just didn't get it.
They didn't get it. Exactly. Yes. You know, I appreciate you saying that. And I wanted to just touch on a little bit about how to move through this. How did we decide to move through it? And it takes, like Dr. Ralitza said, personal responsibility first. It takes, okay, this is the dynamic I grew up in, or this is the dynamic that I have been most familiar with. Because your
Mhm.
question, Heather, was how did I connect to this? How did I keep attracting this? What is wrong with me? Right? Like that's what you want to know. Most of the time, you're like, what did I do wrong? At least
Yes.
that's what we tend to ask, even though nobody's done anything wrong in
Right.
this. There's just wounds on top of wounds on top of wounds that are, light is being shed on that shadow for a reason. But you
Mhm.
can't help but ask yourself that. And so the question is, it was familiar to you. It was familiar to you. As I always say, be careful who you attract when you're grieving. Because that is when you're sometimes in your lowest vibration, and
Mhm.
you will attract someone who mirrors that for you oftentimes. And we have to give each other grace with these relationships. We have to give each other so much grace because I think there's responsibility that has to go on both sides. So I commend both of you, including myself, all three of us who have done this work, who say, I will go first. I will go get coached. I will invest the time, energy, and resources, money, whatever, to go get help for this. And we've all done that. So congratulations to the two of you. Let's inspire more people too. So before we conclude in the next quick, just give us a one liner or two liners. What did you do to help pull yourself out of this? What are some of the modalities that you used to help yourself? Ralitza, you want to go first?
Sure, thank you so much. So it's funny that, of course, synchronistically, I don't really believe in coincidences, but I just posted the energetic scale of consciousness, which I think Dr. David Hawkins
Yes.
really put it out there, and Abraham Hicks first kind of talked about energies and frequencies, and so I found myself at the very bottom in that shame space often in the dynamics. And so really recognizing that feeling shame is a game that I was willing to play with myself. And so being able to take again that responsibility to say, wait a second, I feel bubbly and alive and expansive when I go to the beach and I do what I call a float spa, right? I let it all go, I release it all into the ocean, and I come out and I have my energy back. And then I get back into these dynamics, and then I feel myself going down that energetic sinkhole, though, like I like to call it, right? It goes from that place of enlightenment to, oh, I'm feeling joy now, I'm not feeling joy anymore. And then it goes down, right? I'm not feeling acceptance anymore. Now it goes into, oh, I'm not feeling even courage anymore. A lot of people don't know that desire is even lower than anger on the energetic scale. It's like, wait, we talk about having desires and that being a good thing. We, as the codependents, don't even give ourselves permission to have a desire because we're so trapped in that sinkhole of shame that even desire is far away from us. So for me, I think looking back and really, owning what the steps in the right direction were actually, starting to do arts and crafts, starting to, follow that desire that got me out of the energetic sinkhole to start to feel again, right? Feelings are good. Taking responsibility to actually feel. I know in medicine we shut them down a lot because, well, we have to. The patient comes first, the families come first. You go through a heartbreaking experience, a patient dies in your arms, and of course you're human, you want to feel that grief, but you can't right now. You have to stifle that and put it under the rug and be the strong one for the family because it's their family member. And so we sort of tuck our even that. I know you said one sentence, but it is, I think, to me, taking that responsibility to say, I'm not going to stay in this place. I'm not going to get sucked into that energetic sinkhole and stay here. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And, first it was podcasts, and then it was conversations, and then it was really investing and, getting that person to hold the space. And again, as empaths, our job is not to go down and fall into the energetic sinkhole with the person that we're identifying with. It's actually to pull them up. And so maintaining our own frequency to be high, that is our personal responsibility as empaths, actually. So I'll leave it there, but yeah, I'll leave it
But what
there.
have you
Thank you.
done though? You said you go to the water, that helps you. What else have you done? You've done a
Hmm.
lot to take care of yourself.
Absolutely. And I mean, taking that time, right? Taking that time to say
Yeah.
no. Saying no has been one of the most
Mm.
important things that I've
There you
done.
go.
So not following my heart to my bleeding heart that wants to take care of everybody else, but saying even no to myself to be able to honor myself, boundaries with
Boundaries.
myself, right? To say like you can't take care of everyone right now, you need help. It's exactly what Doc Heather said. Like when you're in that place of like starving, we tend
Mm,
to look
mm,
outside because we are the ones for everybody. We think someone else is going to bring us that solution, but no, we have to
mm,
bring ourselves the solution. We have to say, not right now, cancel that meeting, take a sick day, even though take a sick day before you have a sick day. Like take a mental health and wellness day, even if it's half a day, go to the spa, go to the sauna, go get a massage, and then get into the things. Like I took a break this week. We had an in-person meeting. It's 50, 60 people in a room, and I know that I'm an energetic being. I might not say a lot in the room, but a lot of energy moves because I'm there. And so knowing that that is my responsibility to hold on a Wednesday, I went first thing in the morning on Tuesday to the spa. I got my massage. I went to the sauna. I went to the steam room, practiced the Ho'oponopono prayer, even in the room. Like so many downloads came of how I meant to hold the energy in the room because I did that for myself. And so that day went so much more smoothly for me. Had I been deep in my emails and going back and forth and doing all the things, I would have come into that room exhausted
Mhm.
and not being able to serve and not being able to hold the space. So I think to me it was exactly that is, not pointing the finger. Because in these dynamics, once you realize it, it's easy to be like, oh, he's a narcissist and poor me. And it's like, wait, that just makes the dynamic even worse, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's finding the power that I have to say no, to do the thing and say yes to myself, right? Slow down, recognize it, say no to the outside world and say yes to myself, whatever that is. It's not about being judgmental of, okay, yeah, I'm emotional eating. I want carbs. Yeah, I want carbs right now because they help me to process, right? And that's okay. As long as I don't get stuck in that pattern where now I'm emotionally eating and becoming like the vessel, but it is slowing down to do the thing, to feel the emotions, to process. Feeling emotions was a big one for me. It was
Mhm.
something that I avoided at all costs. So, being willing to, and again, being held by someone who can hold the space, who can hold the energy of where you're moving towards is so, so important. I did it for myself for a very long time. And then I realized why I'm still struggling, obviously, because you get a little bump, a little step in the right direction. But when you're with someone that can hold it and reflect it to you, I think that is the power of a good coach is they also do their own work. They take that
Yes.
energy and at night they're going to work it and it's going to shift your energy, right? Like there's a really beautiful investment in ourselves when we work with a coach that can hold that, or a shaman, or a specialist in this field. It's so much more than what is said in the room. It's not about the talk therapy. It's about the energy that's being elevated in the space. So that was a lot more than one sentence. Thank
Heather, what
you.
about you?
So I would say first things first was I had to sit with myself. And I think we just acknowledged that. And this would be the first time and only time I would recommend people to do that. Sit with yourself where you're isolating, socially isolating yourself. Stop, be still. I still didn't necessarily have a person initially, and I say initially meaning maybe the first 18 months that I was in this journey of realizing and recognizing. So I sat with myself, looks like 10 minutes in the bathroom, close the door, just be with yourself, sit on that toilet and just be there with you in silence, in moment. Because like I said, I go back to the initial thing is number one, I had to make a decision. Am I going to keep living like this? Or do I want to shift it? And I absolutely wanted to shift it. And the shift was I get to have peace. I can't emphasize that enough. And then I had to figure out what does that peace look like, feel like for me. And feeling was a big one. It's amazing how much I talk about feelings, but in the moment, in those 18 months, when people kept saying, Doc, you got to grieve, you got to grieve. And it's not just for physical loss, because we've experienced that, but it is the loss of the concept. Like I thought I had this great marriage, or I wanted to have this great relationship. I wanted to have this phenomenal parent-child relationship, whatever that is. Grieving what you thought you wanted or thought you had or desired, but in the true matter of it is you don't. Okay? So that's what I'm saying. It was initially making a decision. Do I want to keep living like this or do something different? That's that. Then the next step was how do I get to that? I had to put my mask on first, sit still. And it could be as simple as, like I said, 10 minutes in the restroom, because that was the only place I could get some solace, some independent, some quiet me time. Okay, whatever that looks like for you, get some me time. In the car, that's the other one. You're driving by yourself. That's another time I would sit with myself and just have conversations. Now, I'm a very spiritual based foundation person, so I didn't have a human being, but I had my greater God, okay, that I would speak to and just have. And biggest thing, you know what I realized on my journey is I was not expressing, period. And so expressing looked like junk journaling. Expressing looked like writing it out. It didn't have to be cute. It was messy. I just wrote little words, big words, yell, all of that. Expressing, because for so long I just had kept it in, whether it was because I was told to keep it in or I had just made that decision because it kept the peace in that moment relating to someone else. Okay. Then once I kind of set with myself, as they say, when the student is ready, the teacher will come, is when I started to realize and got exposed to the different dynamic and modalities as like professional development. There are programs out there for large scale professional development. I don't know if I should say that because none of them are sponsoring us yet, but something like a landmark forum was a big one. There was a leadership course that I took. Those were large scale. Getting into counseling, getting into therapy, medication could be a modality, but I agree with Dr. Ralitza. It is something you got to do alongside the actual work, right? Not just take the pill alongside. So, and then coaching. What? Not for athletes? For people like me? Yes. Coaching in the way of I'm giving you a structured setting, container for you to start processing these things, asking you questions. Those are huge. So reading books, watching, listening to different audio and podcasts and interacting. I mean, like you said, at all means, I did it just about all. And then I figured out, oh, this is where I feel better. And I started to downsize or to, eliminate, complete some of those things. But ultimately, yes, because I shifted and said, I want to live different, I, in a way, had to step into something totally different. And I'm going to tell
Mhm.
you, it was the personal development side, the coaching, the receiving. Oh my God, that's a big one. Because I'm always a giver. What is this receiving thing? That feels uncomfortable. Because you do live with the shame, right? You do live with the guilt. Like, no,
Yes.
I got it. I'm okay. I'm good. No, you're not good. And that's okay that you're not good. Let's get you some
Hmm.
help. So that was the way I did it. Like I said, I sat with myself. I did scripture reviews. I did just journaling, all of that, junk journaling, the pictures, the like I said, just words, whatever I felt like I needed to get out. And then I started inviting others who knew a little bit more than I did. Particularly one that was a big one is, who am I and what are my values? What is it that I desire? Because I couldn't tell that to somebody else. I couldn't hold that conversation to somebody else if I didn't have it myself.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'll
Yes.
leave it there. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. We've done a lot of work. You can't really answer it in one sentence, to be honest. And so how did I come about it? Well, I started two things I did. I listened to a lot of podcasts too, just on different things. One thing led to another. But I would say for me, the two most instrumental things I've done was coaching, but it was coaching with another fellow physician. It was coaching with my colleague that got it. It wasn't just any coach. It was someone who had walked the walk, who knew all the wounds that doctors have, which are the being quiet, the shame, the suck it up, not to mention emotions. You're talking about emotional eating. Hello. In eating the vulnerabilities, medicine's a perfect place to hide, if
Oh yeah.
because you're always focusing on the other. So when I retired, which would be 10 years this month, when I retired, I was just like, okay, now what? Now it's time for me. And I needed healing from that. I remember my first coaching calls, I was so reactive. I was like, what are you talking about? I just remember almost feeling that like a reactive dog, where you're like, wow, that's not me. What are you talking about? She was triggering me so
Mhm.
much, but it was like the most transformational thing because I had had failed relationships. I'd had death in my family. I couldn't talk to the people who created some of this. We couldn't do it together. I couldn't bring my family with me on this journey because they had passed away. So I'm like rocking this by myself. which was not fun. And then the other thing was shamanism. I asked one question. I was so tired of seeing these cycles repeat. How can we heal this ancestrally? Can we
Mhm.
finally pull it up from the root and be done with it? And that's when the shamanic path opened up to me. And that really was the first time I walked the entire walk for myself, because up until then it was, how do you learn? You think about how many years it took for us to learn how to care for another person, how many nights of study, how many classes, how many exams, years, how many years, 10, 15, 20 years, on how do you focus on another person. I spent one really diving into my own wounds, and that's what the shamanic path was. It really is all about you going first. So those were the two big transformational things I did for myself, which required time, energy, and repetition. You don't just do it one time. And then I did support myself through the fight or flight, which you still can incorporate into your life. You have to go back every day. Okay, I'm in fight or flight. I am calm. So I learned how to balance my chakras. I bought singing bowls. I brought in color therapy and things that I love. I started junk journaling a few years ago now. So those are the things that I chose to do. So if somebody is out there, get somebody to help you. I would not have gotten as far as quickly had I not had a coach, because I didn't have the perspective, the same perspective. She could see me and tell me what's going on in my brain and allow me to get triggered, because you don't want to trigger yourself to heal. It doesn't feel good. Coaching doesn't always feel good, but it was the most transformational thing, along with my personal shamanic training, that I have done. So thank y'all so much. We hope we've given you some ability to identify with narcissism, to identify with the wounds, and to encourage you to receive the assistance that you need. And every healer is different. We all approach things differently. Three of us approach our coaching differently. So if one of us has resonated with you today, you're like, man, I really vibe with her story. Her energy is like my jam. Reach out to them, because both of them, all three of us are here. We do still work as coaches and transformational healers, in whatever sense that may look like, in our different specialties and the way that we function in the world. So thank you, ladies. I'm so honored for you to have been here today. And I know we've already made a big difference in the world. So thank you for coming. And I love y'all so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
to
Gayla, for
you. Thank
having us.
you. Yes.
You're welcome.